So we're going to go into the next fireside chat conversation, and this time it's about innovation as drivers for sustainability. Our two speakers are Axel Kühner, who's the CEO of Greiner AG, and Greiner AG is actually an Austrian-based multinational with 11,500 employees and 139 locations worldwide. That's what I find impressive. It was founded in 1868, but on the website it's still called a family business with history, which I find quite charming. It's a leading company in plastic and the foam industry, but it also does packaging, furniture, sports, automotive, so quite a huge spectrum. And it has a clear sustainability strategy called Blue Plan. So we're quite curious to hear more about this. In conversation with Axel, we have Jason Che, who's a senior lecturer and director of the MIT Sloan Sustainability Initiative. He teaches executive and master level courses on strategy, innovation, and leadership for sustainable businesses. Jason is the co-author of the international bestseller, Breaking Through Gridlock, The Power of Conversation in a Polarized World, and that is already on my reading list. He works as a facilitator for companies, organizations, and also business families, supporting always high quality conversations and a shared commitment for ambitious sustainability goals. I'm very curious to listen to your conversation. Jason, I'm handing over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Katharina. Thanks for having us. Axel, it's good to see you in person or in the face-to-face after we had the phone call. What it counts as in person these days and during the pandemic has obviously been somewhat transformed. We just heard a great panel exploring earlier stage startup social enterprise efforts toward social and environmental sustainability. And what we're going to do in this session is look at the larger company, kind of the more multinational type of perspective. And we're very happy to have Axel Kühner here. And Axel, he may live to regret this, but he asked me to not share questions with him in advance and to ask him as tough a question as I wanted to. So we're gonna push a little bit here, which I think we will should be fun and interesting for the community. So let's just start with the first thing, which is that we have a CEO of a plastics company talking to us about sustainability, and there are people who might see those things as oxymorons. Sustainable plastics, even corporate sustainability, some people see as an oxymoron, given how fast we seem to be racing off of various cliffs. So how do you think about being the CEO of a plastics company and being here at a sustainability conference? How should we square that?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be on here, and it's a pleasure to see you face to face, Jason. After I've enjoyed a great conversation last week. So yeah, of course, as a plastics company, we are deemed to be on the dark side of life. So like 10 years ago, we were talking about innovation and things like that, but things have changed, and there's a good reason to do so. And I think we came up with the idea of creating a sustainability strategy already back in 2014. I would say that this was way before most of our industry peers ever considered thinking about sustainability. I personally was talking to a CEO of a large Austrian plastics producer and talking about sustainability in plastics, and what he answered is, "We're not producing plastics." And I was wondering, saying, "No, so what are you going to do?" "Oh, we are making solutions for customers." And that was really game changing. This was a tipping point for me, because I understood this would never work out, to hide behind innovation and to hide behind products. So I was fully aware that we need to come up with a solution, because we are part of the problems. And I think what the industry did wrong was we always considered ourselves, or we did not consider ourselves as part of the problem. So I think that and I will give you some examples, Jason, we are part of the problem, but we are even more so part of the solution. I think and now I'm coming back to your question. So you have to accept that you cannot ban plastics from our world. It's impossible. And so what we did is we tried not to be fundamental. So what do I mean? I mean, if you compare how to get from point A to point B, and this is like 1,000 miles to go, you always can walk. That's always more environmentally friendly than taking a car. So if you say that's the best way to do it, then you shouldn't use plastics at all. But if you consider that you can, like Elon Musk did, for example, if you can make the way cars operate even more environmental friendly, then this is a success. And this was the way that I was conceiving for us as a corporate. So I said, we want to do the things better than they were done before. And so this is how we can contribute to this planet. So, and we have a track record. So we were the first in Europe to ban polycarbonates from food packaging and so on and so on. So it seems to be a contradiction, sustainability and plastics, but in fact it's not. It is part of the problem, and you have to accept it and you have to take responsibility. But plastics improves our lives, and I think we will touch on that later on. It's not about having a monologue. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. This is great. So when I've written about sustainability-oriented innovation, we talk about it oftentimes as there's some trade-off between two different values that we care about. I want to have the convenience that the plastic provides, but there's a trade-off in terms of the waste that's generated for the environment. And so I'm sort of holding that tension. There's some trade-off, and what sustainability-oriented innovation is the attempt to say, okay, well, maybe we can look at that in two dimensions and try to break the trade-off between those different values. And you described the example of Elon Musk and Tesla, right? I want to have a car that's high performance, that's fun to drive, and that has low CO2 per mile. The Tesla breaks that trade-off in a way that, before I had to choose between a Maserati and a Prius, right? So if you think about the innovation that is happening in Greiner and in the plastics industry, let's see if we can articulate what are those values. First of all, what are the solutions? As you said, there are solutions, right? What are the solutions? What are the things that plastic the critical problems in the world that we need to solve using plastic? And then what are the critical problems that plastic is causing? As you said, we're part of the problem. And then, so what are the kind of critical tensions or trade-offs that we're holding right now? And then we can, from there, talk about the pathways for innovation. So let's start with maybe, what do you think? You said we just can't ban plastics in the world. So what is it that plastics are so important for?
I think what is important, first of all, that we understand that we have to distinguish between pollution and climate change. So these are two different things. Also, they are being mixed up quite intensively, but I think that's important to understand. So plastics end up in the sea quite often. We see that if we walk the beaches. And so this is something we clearly need to avoid. So plastics is being used everywhere. So if you lay your head down tonight, the mattress is made of foam. That's plastics. So if you're undergoing a surgery, no matter what it is, plastics is going to be used. So these are very obvious that there is a value add of plastics. But there are studies that if you replace plastic packaging, for example, against other materials like aluminum, like steel, like glass, the carbon to emissions will increase by at least 60%. There are different studies that talk about 200%, but let's take the figures that are the lowest. So we would clearly we mitigate climate change by using plastic. I know that it sounds weird because what people usually do, they mix up pollution and carbon emissions. So we need to accept that our life as we are used to it is not it's not feasible to maintain without plastics because it's used everywhere. So lightweight materials, it makes sense to have them, and in medical areas and everywhere. So that's what I mean. I think we need to do both. I think we need to consume less. That's a given. So I think that's something we can do as individuals. And as companies, as corporates, we of course we need to think in systems. We need to create systems which help mitigating the environmental impact. And for me, it is so obvious. We need to create circular plastic models. If we will not be able to move away from our linear models to a circular one, there will be a huge problem in the future. So and this is where innovation kicks in. So the way to get into recycling is much more difficult than in wood or paper or even in aluminum. And why is that? Because plastics, it looks quite the same. You have these white materials and it looks the same, but by adding very small additives and so you change the material completely, which means that for recycling, of course, standardization is needed. So if in paper, you can put these things together and you can recycle it easily. But in plastics, it's very, very difficult because you really need to sort the material, so the waste very well, just to be able to recycle it. And I think, so we need to think along the value added chain. So we need to speak about innovation, and we can talk about this later on. So, but that is key. So it's a world without plastics will not work, at least not for the next decades. But we need to consume less, and we need to create a circular business model.
So you're not the first person from a plastics industry who's I've heard talk about circular economy. Okay, so and it's, in a way, I think that the whole concept of circular economy gives us permission to keep growing while it supposedly gives us permission to keep growing because we're going to handle our waste products and deal with those responsibly. And we'll come back to that. But I want to hone in on something I think much more challenging that you said, which was we need to reduce consumption. Right. And it's actually not every day that I hear a plastics executive saying we need to reduce consumption, especially when a part of your product, a big volume of your products is actually in plastic packaging, which are high volume consumer goods. So can you talk a bit about when you say we need to reduce consumption, is that something that is a personal belief, that's something that you can exercise in your personal life? Or what does it mean to have a business strategy that is built around reducing consumption?
For being a father of two young daughters, it is a personal responsibility. That's one, but that's not what I'm talking about so much. I'm talking about our company, and it's both. To clearly answer your question, so we are not selling plastics by kilo. So we are trying to sell smart product solutions here, and so we are trying to sell premium products. So by innovating plastics products, you can do both. You can consume less, and you can also contribute to your bottom line, because in the end, we're not talking about the top line. So turnover doesn't buy us anything. So it's about the profit that we make, because this profit we can reinvest in our company. So it's
can you give us just so we can visualize something? Can you give us a physical kind of concrete example of what you mean there?
Yes, of course. Easy. So we were the inventor of the so-called K3 yogurt cup. This is a cup which combines plastics and the cardboard. So you have this plastics cup inside, and you have a cardboard wrapped around to stabilize the product. What does it mean? You have a zipper, so you can separate plastics and paper, so you can dispose it separately, so it's recyclable, and you use less material. And this is what we believe makes sense. So we consume less. So we consume less material, but at the same time, we have a high margin product. And so it's a win-win situation. So that kind of a product.
So we're talking about less material per unit of the product,
for example, but also less energy. Trying to implement safety measures for our employees. All that is it reduces consumption, and it creates more.
I think there's an important distinction to make between relative resource consumption and absolute resource consumption. So relative resource consumption meaning the amount, like the grams of plastic per yogurt cup, right? And so lightweighting and reducing and innovating, totally understand that. And then there's the absolute reduction, which is the absolute number of yogurt cups that are sold every year, which may be another leverage point, but maybe one that's not as compatible with the turnover growth.
Yeah, but Jason, it's both. It's going to be both. It's also the absolute amount. I mean, if you come up with a solution, so take a closure of a water bottle. So like a couple of years ago, you had a little strip around, you had to pull this off to make sure it's unused. So and the smart closure made you refrain from this additional strap. So this reduces, and so this is also what you can do. And of course, and I think, but that's more or less something that you have to do as a person. You really need to consume less. So, for example, we have car policies which I mean give you an incentive if you use less mileage and stuff like that. So it's both. Of course, we're thinking very much in terms of new product ideas, and of course we need to apply this consume less idea there as well, but it's all over the board that you have to think in terms of consuming less.
Let's go to the circular part, right? So you were saying that there were a couple of things that you said about the pathway to circular economy and plastic. So one was you said that some of the plastics are complex. You have multiple different materials in the same plastic. And so separability becomes difficult. And that you said standardization might be one of the key elements there. So we might have to standardize on a set of plastics so that you kind of always know what you're getting and there's consistency there. There's also other aspects of that circularity, like having good municipal recycling systems and recovery systems. How Greiner is a manufacturer. You're not a municipal collection recycler. You're not. So how do you participate in the development of a circular system, given that, as you said, that's a systems problem, not something that one company can easily tackle?
So what we found out when trying to improve in regard of recycling, we found out that one individual part of this value-added chain can do nothing. So that is something you need to understand. So you need the entire value-added chain. So for the consumer brands, they need to understand what we as processing companies are capable of. We as processing companies need to understand what the material producers are capable of. We need to tell them, please refrain from black colors, carbon black colors, because they will hinder recycling. We need to tell them, please leave this out. And so on and so on. We need to tell those collectors what to collect together and what to separate, because we need clear material streams so that we will be able to get to recycling. So Greiner, we as a corporate, and myself as a person, we were the founder of a platform for sustainable plastics packaging in Austria, where we try to bring together the entire value-added chain to come to new solutions. And I think that's very important. And this is why I personally believe that Austria is a great place to do this, because it's a small country, but we are well connected and we have everything. We have great companies. We have recycling machine world market leaders in Austria, and you have to bring these together. So we are trying to create a network of companies working together, because in this particular case of plastics recycling, no one can do it alone. That's important to understand.
This kind of innovation, both in the product design innovation, this kind of network building, circular economy innovation, these bigger questions about consumption, all of these tend to require a perspective. None of these things are going to happen tomorrow, right? They all require a little bit of longer term perspective. And I was wondering, this is a question that just came up in the chat and that was on my mind as well. It was mentioned before that Greiner is a family-owned business. You've spent some time in your career in publicly traded firms, right? Daimler, Mercedes, and in this closely family privately held firm. Do you feel like that affects your ability to work on sustainability, for better or for worse? Is the time horizon different? Is the mandate different? Is the mission different? Can you speak a bit about that?
I would say everything is different, because I would say there's an intrinsic motivation to be sustainable in my shareholders. So if my shareholders have to decide between more profit or more sustainability, they would decide for more sustainability. And so I would say that they are breathing down my neck to be more sustainable, because I mean, I've been a CEO for 12 years now, but sometimes I will be gone. But as Katharina said in the intro, we have a history of more than 150 years. So I will only be a very small part of the history of this company, and this changes everything, because it's not about is it the most profitable era, but it's a question, how can we take it to the next generation? So everything is different. I can spend money for that. I can take my time. I would say I can have different priorities, different speeds. Of course, we need to make profit, but that's because we leave most of the money in the company for the future. Yeah, so everything, Jason, is different. That's why I enjoy it so much to be part of a family business.
Yes.
Honestly.
Well, and an owning family like that has other levers that they can pull as well. So they may have liquid capital that they can do impact investment with. They may have philanthropic foundations. They may have political influence and engagement. Are there other ways that the owning family supports the sustainability mission beyond the operations and governance of Greiner itself?
Yes, of course they do, but I think in my case they are very humble people. It's not that they want to stay in the back. They just give me they stand behind me in my aspiration to be more sustainable. And because we are also making mistakes on that way. So a couple of years ago, I wanted to get into solar energy, which clearly failed over the years. And so what they do is they try to make me stay on this path, trying to be more sustainable. Also, when I made a mistake, they say, okay, we are entrepreneurs and we want to live up to our values. And so I think that's the most important thing. They engage with social enterprises and so on. So they do a lot. But I think the most important thing that they do is that they stand behind us as a corporate and our aspiration to become better in the future. I think, but one thing I would really like to say is that we are talking so much about plastic packaging. And I think what I would like to say is what people need to understand again is why there is packaging. And the reason why there is packaging is to protect the goods. And this is something we really need to understand if we have this very necessary discussion. But I mean, it takes 14,000 liters of water to have 1 kilo of beef. So if this kilo would spoil because we would refrain from 2 grams of plastics foil, it just doesn't make sense at all. Or if we have this discussion with cucumbers in Austria, so the supermarkets refrain from plastics foil to protect the spoil increased by 15%. That doesn't make sense. And I'm not saying that use plastic as much as you can. No, I'm not. But we really need to balance the discussion. That's what I'd like to say.
Yeah, that life cycle perspective that is really essential. Since this is a day of cross-sectoral dialogue, I'll just have one more question here, which is, we've talked a lot about your role as a company. If we step back and say, what are the government policies or what are the other things from other corners of Austria or more broadly in society that would help you do your job more easily? What policies would allow you to move faster on sustainability?
I think that, we're talking so much about subsidies. And I mean, if I remember correctly, nuclear power was subsidized with more than $1 trillion US dollars over the decades. And I think if we really mean this serious to have a change, then it makes a lot of sense to also subsidize the creation of a recycling system. So that is really something so that we believe that we should have a broad policy of subsidies. And the second is that in our educational system, we need to create more priority for environmental education. And I think this is something which should start very, very early in school, in elementary school. So that is something that people on a very, very early stage understand how important it is. I think these are the two things. So subsidies for the corporates, but also education for the people to better understand the full impact of what we're doing. I think that are the two things to improve.
Great, thank you. I see Katarina appearing here, so I think we're getting the hook. But Axel, I really appreciate your insights and candor and willingness to spar here. So thank you
for having me.
Cheers.
Great event.
Thank you so much, Axel. Thank you so much, Jason. We also very much appreciated those insights. And again, the chat was buzzing with comments. And of course, there would have been many more questions. So again, also the invitation to our audience, if you want to continue the conversation later on, you're all invited to our networking launch, which we will have at the very end of the event to make sure that you also get space to communicate with each other about everything that you've heard today.